Yeah, so I cut pictures out of paper. It's a little bit hard to describe until you look at it because people are like, what, you paper cut? So I think they just, assume I'm cutting my hands most of the time, but no, I draw really detailed images and then I cut that out of paper. I like framing them in glass frames so that when you hang it on the wall, you get the cast of the shadow, and that kind of just adds a three-dimensionality to the whole image overall. I'm usually quite inspired by geometric patterns juxtaposed by organic feminine shapes. So that's kind of what I usually focus on when I'm making my art. My background in education is in history with minors in archaeology and religious studies. So I've always really been inspired by old historical images as well as trying to infuse like spiritual and religious symbolism in my art as much as possible, especially through the geometric patterns. I really enjoy sacred geometry, and so I try to incorporate a lot of those geometric patterns into my images in order to symbolize rebirth and growth and that kind of thing. There is a level of mathematics that I sometimes use when I'm planning stuff out, like just to grid, so that way I know it's all going to line up. But to call myself a mathematician would be not the truth whatsoever. So my studio is upstairs in a spare room that I have. Now that I'm working full-time, I try to do at least an hour of work a day just so that way I'm maintaining stuff. During COVID, when I was not working full-time, I would work at least 5 hours a day on art. Usually kind of what stopped me is at some point I start to get hand cramps and I need to put everything down and just like take a rest, and then because my eyes also start to like shift a little bit, and then it makes it hard to really focus on the details of what I'm cutting out. So usually about 5 hours, especially if it's a harder piece of paper to cut, because then it really, really starts to hurt my hand. Staying motivated can be really hard. What motivates me ultimately is just a desire to create. To sit here doing nothing, I get antsy and I need to be doing something, and if I'm not making something, I feel like I'm not accomplishing something in my day. So that's what really motivates me, is I can't sit there doing nothing. I need to be making something always. So I'm completely self-taught when it comes to paper cutting. I started probably about 9 years ago. I've always really enjoyed drawing and making art, and I've always really enjoyed doing origami. And so I kind of started to do some kirigami projects, which incorporates paper folding and paper cutting. And those were lots of fun, but to kind of be able to make my own art with that required a level of architecture that I didn't quite have. So I started to look kind of more into folk art, and a lot of Ukrainian and Japanese folk art do paper cutting, and I just thought it was a really perfect opportunity for me to mesh my line drawings that I really like doing while bringing it to life in an overall piece of art. I've never been much one for painting or coloring, so I found it a really easy way to bring my line drawings to life without having to paint. I do have a sketchbook that I draw stuff in. So yeah, I'll sketch stuff in there. And then sometimes usually just like an idea hits me and then I'm like, I need to go make that right now. So I won't even necessarily draw stuff in my sketchbook. I'll just start drawing it on my tracing paper that I'm going to turn into the stencil. So yeah, I do have a sketchbook that I keep ideas in, but a lot of the time it's just like, this is what I need to make, and then I go make it. Ultimately, I would like to be doing art full-time. That's the dream. It's more about kind of organizing myself till I can get to the point to do that. More commissioned work, freelance, that kind of thing. So that's ultimately the point where I would like to get to, but I know that's a long-term dream that's going to require a lot of building to that point. I think that's also what kind of drew me to do paper cutting, is the overhead costs are quite low. Your cost of paper, which depending what kind of paper you're buying, is usually not that expensive. Like you can get a decent sized piece of poster board for $3. So And then you can make yourself a really nice piece of art out of a $3 poster board. To buy your blades, you're probably maybe looking at $15 for the actual body itself, and then replacement blades like $20 a month type thing. So that's probably the most expensive. And then if you get yourself something to sharpen them, you can keep reusing them for a long period of time. So your biggest cost is ultimately buying the frames that you're putting your art in. My advice is just go for it. If it makes you happy, then make it. Don't let anybody stop you. If it brings joy to your heart, then make it. Just go make it. So this is technically 3 pieces of paper. So there's the back black, the one piece of gold, and then the white overlay. So I drew the stencil all out by hand. I actually have it taped on my wall upstairs right now, just because I couldn't bear to like throw it out. It still looks really kind of pretty, even though it's all like patchy and taped together. But yeah, so the white's all one piece of paper, and then that I lined up the gold underneath to create more visual depth between that and the black. Normally, I do like to just kind of not have a background so that they cast shadows, but because of the white, it made it a little bit hard to read, so the black really just made it pop a little bit more. I normally do a lot of my pieces out of just one piece of paper, so this one was a little bit different for me in the fact that I used technically 3 in the overall finished piece. This piece was also very heavily inspired by 20s vaudeville and Metropolis, and yeah, 1920s Art Deco style. But yeah, I like to infuse a lot of geometric patterns in my art. This one in particular is made on kind of more expensive paper. So the white is handmade paper from, I believe, Italy, and the gold is shiogami paper from Japan, and then the black is just a nice black poster board. But yeah, basically this represents the soul reaching into the universe as it expands and is created. And that's also representative of the fans as that float out from her as well. Basically, it's all kind of an explosion of energy from the ultimate source is what that is.